Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel today on this Friday morning in Adelaide. And today we're going to do our second lesson in taking the mystery out of photography. And you might recall in the last one, we talked about the hole in the middle, which lets the light in to either the digital sensor on the back of your digital camera or the film in the back of your film camera, the film plane. Where the image is captured on both the film and also on the digital sensor in your digital camera. So today I'm just going to try and show you using a film camera, a Pentax SP1000 film camera, and to show you just what a shutter looks like in this camera. I mean, there are different types of shutters. There are leaf shutters and focal plane shutters and other electronic shutters in electronic cameras, in digital cameras. So there's a whole range of types of shutter, but they all do essentially the same thing. They open and shut the exposure, which is captured on the film or on the digital sensor. So depending on how quick the shutter opens and closes to let the light in through the hole, whichever size hole you've got, which is the aperture, the combination of that aperture and the film speed or the ISO speed and the shutter speed give you a correct exposure, depending on what you're trying to do. And a shutter is designed to do many things. It can give you a very sharp image, freeze action when you've got someone going past fast or when you're taking sports photography and things like that. And also you can slow the shutter right down for taking time exposures over when it's quite dark or nighttime sky and things like that. Or you can use it to create blur when something's moving past, like a person on a bike or someone running. And if you follow with the camera as you have the shutter open in any lengthy period, well, then you'll keep the main subject in the middle fairly sharp, but the rest of all the outside will be blurred, so it gives the idea of motion. So I'm just going to give you a glimpse take the mystery a little bit out of what a shutter looks like on the back of a film camera. And you don't really need to know all the technology, why it works and how it works necessarily, or the science behind it. You just got to know that it's there and it works on either a film camera or a digital camera. So here we have the Pentax SP1000. This is a beautiful camera. This was my mum's camera, and my dad bought this for my mum many years ago. It's hardly been used. I used to use it as a backup camera on weddings when I did wedding photography. So I'm just going to show you on the top here. Up here, you can use this knob here to change the shutter speed. So you might be able to see those shutter speeds there. Doesn't necessarily focus up all that well up close on my phone, but you've got shutter speeds ranging from a second through to 2 seconds or a half a second, a fourth of a second, and then it goes an eighth of a second, 15th of a second, 30th of a second, 60th of a second, a 125th of a second, 250th of a second, 500th of a second, and 1000th of a second. So the slower ones there are when you want to do a time exposure or blur something, and the faster ones up the top, the 1000 and the 500 and the 250, are when you're wanting to freeze action. So you just simply, there's a little arrow there. You can see that little arrow, hopefully, just there, about just at the end of my finger there. See that little arrow there? So to set the shutter on these, it's all mechanical on here. So you just move the shutter speed to the different sections that you want. So I'm moving that to 125 there, which is a fairly popular shutter speed when you're in normal daylight conditions that you use a lot, and then vary your aperture to get what you want. So, but I'm going to set this back now to a half a second, so that when I open the back up, it's now set to half a second on there. You might just see that there, it's set on the 2. So that slows the shutter speed right down. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open the back of this. And to open the back of this on these old film cameras, there's a rewind button there where you rewind your film. And on the Pentax cameras, you simply just pull this up, and some other types of cameras as well. You simply pull that up. See, it's up there like that. And now, and that's what you do to load the film as well. But to see the back of the camera as well, we just pop this open, and there you go, it comes open. And there, in there is the shutter. Sometimes it's made out of cloth and sometimes out of other things. And that's shutter. The film is pressed up against that, winds over from this side here over to this side here, each shot you take. And then when you take the shot, press the shutter release up here, well, then this quickly goes across and back and lets light in onto the camera coming through the aperture at the front of the camera. So I'm just going to show this and see if you can actually see what's happening here. Oh, hang on, I better cock the shot, ready to show. There's no film in here, of course, so we've got that cocked and ready to go. So we just press the button. See that? It was slow. It was letting, it's on maximum aperture there, so that's letting a lot of light in for that shot. So if you're taking shots in the dark, maybe that's the sort of setting you'd have it on. And then, so we wind it correspondingly to a faster shutter, maybe a 30th of a second, okay? So we've got it at a 30th of a second now, and it'll be a bit quicker, see? And then we put it right up to a 1,000th of a second, and you'll hardly even see it. Hardly even see it move. I've got the aperture wide open so you can see a bit of light coming through there. See, you didn't even see that, did you? But it did open and shut. Oh, you could just quickly see the light coming through there then. So that's just taking the mystery out of what the shutter does, how it operates. Whether it's a film camera or a digital camera, the shutter operates in much the same way. You set the speed, or the camera automatically sets the speed. If you're using a shutter priority setting on your automatic setting on your camera, if you set shutter priority, well, then you manually adjust the speed, and then the camera does the rest if it's an automatic camera. With this one, though, you've got to set it all manually. You've got a meter on here as well, where you can work out what your metering is, what the right settings should be, and you can adjust accordingly your aperture and your shutter to get the right reading with a needle in the middle comes in here. I can't show you that on here at the moment. So I hope that's just taken a little bit of the mystery out of shutter speeds, and we're building up with the three basic things of the camera. Well, there's four basic things really. There is the aperture, the shutter speed that we're taking today, and also the ISO, which is whether it's a film or whether it's a sensor on a digital camera, that governs how much light the film plane or the digital sensor will be able to take in any given amount of time. So it's a way of adjusting whether you need to let a lot of light in quickly or light in slowly, and all those sort of things. You have three things. You have what they call the photographic triangle. You have the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO, the film speed, or the sensor speed. And then the other thing, which we'll touch on later on when you're using digital cameras, and also it applies to film cameras as well, is the type of light that you're dealing with, because light has different color temperatures. So in here, I'm under fluorescent lights. So I need to, if I've got a digital camera, I need to actually set the camera, either rely on the automatic, because it's relying on automatic setting here at the moment. But I'll show you some samples in a moment of how the shutter can freeze the action and some of the effects of what I'm talking about. So we'll just stop the camera at this part, and I'm going to go across and then add some shots and talk to them as we go. So let's have a go at this now. So I'm just going to show you now what I've been talking about. I'm going to enlarge the screen so that you can see part of a training course that I've delivered to different people over in different groups and individuals over the years in training people about some of the principles of photography. So I've got a little segment here in one of my Keynote or PowerPoint type programs which talk about shutter speed and correct creative exposure. I've just got two samples which I really think show what I've been talking about with the effect of shutter speed. So we're going to just go to the share the screen now. And I'm going to just get that out the road. And I'm going to click on here and I'm going to bring that up. Okay, so there we go. Correct exposure, which is what it's all about with photography, relies on a combination of ISO speed, aperture or f-stop settings and shutter speed. Some call these three the photographic triangle. The shutter speed, if it is fast, will freeze action. If it is slower, it will introduce blur, which can be used creatively. A time exposure is when you have the camera mounted on a tripod and the shutter is kept open for several seconds. Time exposures are used for taking pictures of star trails and other special effects. And, you know, like nighttime scenes where there's not much movement involved. Both of these next shots I'm going to show you now are correct exposure. They have a correct exposure value, but they are not necessarily creative correct exposure depending on your own judgment. You could argue that both are correct creative exposures, as you might be looking for sharp focus, or you might be looking for deliberate blurring. So here's the first one. I had a young lady come to see me, this is back in 2013 when we did this little exercise, and I was trying to demonstrate what I'm talking about here. So we got a plastic bucket and I got her to throw it up in the air, and I set my camera to not this one here, but my digital camera to shutter priority. And I set 1,000th of a second because I knew that that would freeze the action. And it was an 18mm wide angle lens and ISO 400 was the setting. So because I had it set on shutter priority, the actual aperture was chosen for me, and of course it was automatic focus as well. So there you go. That was freezing the action of the bucket going into the air. And then we did the same shot, and it's got reasonable depth of field in the background there. Most things are in focus, but the bucket certainly stands out as quite sharp. And I've frozen the action. That bucket was moving as Alicia chucked that into the air. So here's the next one, which is a variation of the same thing with a different shutter speed. There you go. So that was shutter priority, but notice how I set the shutter at a 15th of a second. And then the shutter priority chose f22 as the aperture, and still the same lens, still the same ISO, but the camera blurred, you know, the slower shutter blurred the image. Now the overall exposure is correct, but I was going for a blur there to demonstrate that, whereas back here I was going to demonstrate that I was going for a sharp shot. So for that type of setting there with your shutter priority, you can freeze action, whether it's a football player or a person riding a bike going past at speed or on skates or whatever, any movement, you freeze the action. But if you were taking a photo of someone running on a racetrack or a horse going past, you move the camera. I actually moved the camera as I took that shot. I brushed the camera back up, and you can't probably see me there, but if you look in the top right-hand corner, I was following the action quickly with the camera. I had it all lined up in my eye, and I just followed the action with the camera and clicked the shutter at an appropriate moment. And that's how I got that shot. So we're going to just come out of there now, if I can find my way. So I hope you found that interesting, and I'll do a bit of editing and put that together, and we'll, I hope you like it, and it gives you some idea, taking the mystery out of photography, these simple adjustments that can make all the difference in the photo that you're trying to take. So once again, thanks for watching and thanks for listening, and like if you like and subscribe if you wish, and I'll see you next time.